and but it's something quite timely and also like very related to the 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 thing that is quite very that the conversation has been going around today, which is around open source. And I know that we understand, most of us that are Web3 developers here will know that the blockchain is heavily reliant on open source stuff. But the conversation today is going to be around how you as a person, how you as a contributor could channel those contributions to these things by doing open source contributions and submitting, contributions via the way open source is mostly on GitHub or something like that. So, but we brought in the best person to have that conversation with us, and I'll do a little bit of introduction and bring him on stage because I really like to start these things very early on because the more time we give to these conversations, the more we can give the speaker opportunities to pass knowledge down to us. So, Ekene Eze is currently a developer advocate focusing on open source contribution at Shadium, and a lot of the things he's going to be saying today should be taken with weight because it's literally that's what his work can tell. So he has the info is very updated and about the current way and the best way to perform this to make this contribution. And I believe that in the next 1 hour or let me say 40 minutes or so, we will have gotten all that we need to start and kickstart our contribution um, on via to Web3 projects via open source. So once again, welcome to the workshop. And without further ado, I will bring Ekene Eze on the stage. Uh, my boss, please, if you can just unmute your mic and turn on your video, that'll be awesome.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yeah,
can hear you.
Yes, my video has been on since I joined. Can you all see me? Seems like Koha couldn't see me.
I can see you now.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, Web3 Africa. How's everyone doing? Um, Sorry we brought you all out on your weekend when you're supposed to be at a bar somewhere having a good time. Or just watching Netflix and chilling. But I also promise this is going to be also really helpful to you. And that's why we've all made time to put it together. And thank you, Kohar and everyone else that is part of the management team for having me. Why I'm here is because we are doing a mentorship program for open source communities across Africa and India at Shadium, which is where I work. And I mean, that's also why, Web3 Africa was the first to come to mind when we're looking at, okay, which communities should we extend this mentorship to? So when I reached out, we put together this workshop to help you all get started with open source. So I'm going to kick it off. It's going to be a workshop. So there's going to be a little bit of slide sharing and a little bit of hands-on showing you how things actually work. So grab a cup of coffee, get some water, get some tea if you need one. You can also get a bottle of beer or a can of beer. I really don't mind. Whatever you're feeling like, do it because for the next 1 hour, I'm going to be trying to tell you what open source is and why you should contribute and some of the benefits that come out of it. So let's dive right in. I'm going to share my screen now so we can start with a little bit of screen sharing and slide presentation. Someone let me know when y'all can see my screen.
I can see it.
What did you see?
yeah.
Getting started with open source.
Awesome. All right, great. Okay, so before we dive in, a little bit of introduction. If you've not seen my face before, I know Desmond and Joshua has seen me before, but if you haven't seen me before, my name is Ekene Eze. I am Nigerian. I'm from Enugu State. I worked with companies like Flutterwave, where I was the head of developer experience. I worked with Netlify, Colorblind, where I was the director of developer relations. And now I'm working as a developer advocate at Shadium. Shadium is an EVM-based layer one chain that is auto-scaling, right? The company prides itself to be the first and the only auto-scaling blockchain that is currently available in the industry. I won't go into the technicalities of how that works. If you'd like to know, I'm always happy to tell people how we are achieving auto scaling at Shadim. But today's presentation is mostly about how you can get started with open source, and let's dive right into it. So what is open source? Open source refers to software with source code that anyone can access, can inspect, can modify, and can enhance, right? I think that's probably the lowest level definition to it. There's, of course, a lot more to it when you go down the path of really going to the business use cases of open source. What really is it? But at a very high level, if you build a software program today, or you build your website, or it could be really any software whatsoever, and you open source the code by pushing it to GitHub as a public repository with the requirement of a README contributing guide. And once you check all of those boxes, that project is open source and people can start collaborating with you on it. So that's just as it is. That very small project that could be your portfolio site. If you push it on GitHub, get an open source license for it, like an MIT license, have your contributor guide, a README that walks people through it. That's pretty much an open source project. So that is what it is. Now, popular examples that you all might know would be Ethereum. Ethereum is open source. Mozilla Firefox, the browser that a lot of people use, is also an open source project. React, for some of you who are on the front end side of things, is also an open source project. And what I mean by this is, for any of these tools, you can go today, find a GitHub repository, and send a pull request. So that is what tells you that it's an open source project, because you can find it, you can access it, you can modify the code, you can break things. If you feel like Mozilla has been, up and running for a long time and you need to, fuck stuff up for them, you can send a really bad PR. But please don't do that. I'm just telling you, it's accessible. You can modify, you can enhance, you can inspect, you can do all of those things. So that's how open source projects. Why should it matter to anyone? So do any of you know the story of React from the time they built React at Facebook and launched it the first time? Anyone heard about that story? I don't know. I can't see your hands, so I wouldn't really know if anyone was raising any hands. But let me give you a bit high level of that story. They built React at Facebook and they announced it at a conference somewhere in Europe, I suppose. And at the time, there weren't like any component based architecture, right? People just built their websites with normal HTML, CSS, and a couple of JavaScript frameworks that were available at the time. So they built this thing called React, and they announced it to everyone and said, hey, you can componentize things now. And people were like, what the hell is that? Nobody liked it. It was, people shit on it so much that they started making like threads on, I think, Reddit at the time. People were just talking about how bad it is. And then the React team had to, do a lot of work to convince Facebook that they should open source the tool, right? Remember, at the time, it's a very Facebook is an enterprise that deals with enterprise licenses. They don't do anything that don't get them money somehow in return. And you're telling them, hey, you should, build this tool that is going to be the next big thing, make it open source so anybody can access it and use it for free. And the company's like, so how does any of this help me in the first place? Like why should we invest resources into doing it? So the team was able to convince their stakeholders at the time that it's going to be a worthwhile effort. And I mean, as you can see with the React adoption today, it is a worthwhile effort to make it open source. So the ability to collaborate with other people to continue to innovate. The reason why it started taking off actually is that a couple of people outside of the React ecosystem, or maybe people who were still inside of the React ecosystem, started kind of weighing in and sending contributions. I think one of the first people to contribute to React at the time was Sophie Albert, who wasn't even working like as part of the React team at the time, but she saw it, read up on it, decided to try it out, tried it out, and started, opening issues and making her own contributions, and that's how it took off. Of course, a lot of things happened along the line. But because it was open, people were able to say, hey, what if we do something like this? What if we did it like that? People would innovate with you, they will collaborate, they will send ideas, open issues, and it basically gave rise to the React that we have today. So innovation is faster. People can iterate quickly. People can think out of the box. People who don't have any idea about your product or your project can, come with a fresh mind and innovate with you. Transparency is key as well, because people who are using your software, they can see how it works and they can test its functionality and they can decide, okay, we want to work with this. When I was working at Flutterwave, one of the things that we faced, one of the issues we faced a lot is we have a lot of enterprise and proprietary tools that people will just have to blindly trust you and put all their money making projects on top of that tool. They don't know how it works behind the scenes. They don't know what APIs you're calling. They don't know how you're processing that transaction. All they know is that you give them an SDK, they use it, they do npm install, and they hope to God that it works, right? It's things like that are not always very scalable, especially when it is scalable because it has scaled, but when trust factor becomes an issue, then it's not scalable because basically you're telling somebody to trust you with all of their project and all the things they do without really knowing how you do the things you do with the data that they provide to you. So transparency helps. Open source projects are all transparent. You can open up the Ethereum blockchain repository today. You can see how its map functions work. You can see the algorithm that you use. You can basically get a full-on understanding of how everything goes on behind the scenes. And then you can decide, okay, this is what I want to use or not. And then it also helps foster a community of supportive developers who are unified towards a common goal. This is the one that I really care about the most. Is there's this I don't know how to say, there's this movement, there's this community of open source developers that is ongoing at the moment, right? The it's kind of like just a collection of different people who are all working together towards a common goal, and that goal is to make sure that we have at least in the Web3 scene, a decentralized world, right? And one way to do that is open source. My manager would very often tell me that if the engineers inside of Shadium are the ones who are building the Shadium core protocols, then we are not as decentralized as we ought to be. So open source also helps bring your project to everyone. Everyone should have a say. Everyone should participate evenly to anything that is going on. Okay, how to contribute to open source? One of the first things to do is to explore some open source project listing platforms. I think I have just two for you. One of them is GitHub Explore. If you go to GitHub Explore, you would see a ton of. Actually, let's go there. I like to show and tell. I'm a show and tell person. So this is GitHub Explore. You can explore all the trending open source repositories. It's going to get these repositories based on your interest or based on the ones that you've contributed to. I think, yeah, so they say here's what we found based on your interests. So based on your GitHub activity, they're going to recommend or show you some trending open source projects. So for me, if today, Saturday, is the day that I wanted to say, okay, let me look for an open source project I can contribute to, and I come to explore, I can see that there's AI for Beginners by Microsoft. I can see that there's the Python one for Superbase Community. There's a TypeScript project, OSS protocol documentation. So I can start to dig into, one of these and try to see what's all about and see how I can contribute to it. Another one is onlydust.com. I think I found out about this one recently. Contribute to the best open source project in the blockchain. So this one is specific to Web3 projects, which is good for us because we are in Web3, right? So you can click on the Discover project, and it will show you a couple of different open source projects that you can start contributing to, right away. So that's one of the first steps, right? Is to find the project that you want to contribute to. And then how do you contribute when you found it? you have to decide on the type of contribution, and we will dive a bit deeper into it, into this particular level. In Let me see how much time we've got. Okay. Yeah, but the first things to know is that there's different types of contributions, right? There's documentation where you would improve the project readmes and the documentation of that tool. Let's say React, for instance, if you wanted to contribute to React today, you could start from improving the docs. Almost every open source project I know also have their documentation open, they have their readmes open, they have their contributing.md files open, everything is open. So you can start from writing and just looking at what you can do to improve the documentation. Then there's, of course, code contributions where you can fix some bugs. You can look at the open issues, find some of the bugs that people are reporting, fix it and push the changes. You can decide to add a new feature, right? I don't know if you all know this guy at Flybear on Twitter. He's the founder and CEO of Flight Control. Maybe some of you would know him. He's very popular for flying his, he has, what is he called again? What do you call the planes, but the small one? Oh my God. Jet, I think, private jet. Well, I wouldn't call
Private
it a private. It's just a plane, like a small aeroplane. The one that carries just one or two people.
is a
So
jet.
say it again.
I mean, a jet, a jet.
Yeah, I think it's just called the jet. So he has one of those, and
Helicopter. I think helicopter.
helicopter. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The helicopter. So he has a helicopter, and he would normally fly in his helicopter to, developer conferences. I met, well, I didn't. I met him some few years ago in Croatia. But when we went to one conference we did together in Atlanta, I think I don't know, either Atlanta or Miami last year, he came with his helicopter and he gave me a ride. And he was telling me about flight control and all the things they were doing. The reason why he came to mind is that 2 days ago or yesterday, he made an open source contribution to Next.js because he was trying to do something and that thing wasn't working. And he's like, you know what? Let me send a PR that fixes this thing from the framework level so that I can utilize that thing on my project. And he tweeted that, hey, I made this open source contribution and it was merged in after 8 minutes that I opened it, right? So that is the adding new feature, fixing an existing bug kind of contribution that you too can do if you're that technically comfortable with diving into the code. Another one is testing. Now, this is where I shine as a person. This is where I like to do my own contributions when I'm thinking of open source. Actually, this is where I did my first open source contribution, is reporting bugs and suggesting improvements. So what I do is, because usually, if you tell me to go and contribute to, I don't know, Vertex AI because it's open source, or I should go and contribute to, I don't know, Ethereum, I wouldn't be comfortable to just go dive into the code and start messing around with things to send a PR. I would most likely start with, let me read through the existing documentation and do the things that is actually, that's the step I follow. I go through the README. I try to set it up to work locally. As I'm doing that, I'm taking notes if things are working, if things are not working. For instance, if you tell me to npm install at this package and I do npm install that package, if I get any issues, I would write that down, right? So when I'm done with my experiment, with the research of following the steps that you've documented to do what you said I should do, I will know if the experience that I have is in line with the one that you documented. If things are not the same, then that is my way of contributing to that project. I'm going to send a new PR that says, hey, when I did npm install, XYZ thing did not work, but I did XYZ thing and it worked. So that will become something that I can contribute. That is usually actually my preferred way of telling people, if you're getting into a new code base the first time, the first thing that I would want you to do is go through whatever they've documented, try to do those things, see if it works as it's supposed to work. If it doesn't, then that's your first contribution. Immediately you can open a new issue, open a discussion, whatever their flow is. Different projects have different contribution guidelines, so you follow their guideline to open an issue or open a discussion, have a conversation about it. And that, even just opening an issue is an engagement. It means that you care enough to want to tell them that you found an issue, and that's I feel like maintainers would always appreciate that. Another way you can contribute is to be supportive in the community, right? Help others in forums and chat groups, in Discord servers. If people have questions, be active to help give them answers. And some of these are not really even very technical. Some of them could be you just saying, hey, I saw that you had a question about how XYZ thing worked. This is a link to how they explained it in the documentation, right? So you're just being really helpful. You're active. You're helping people solve problems by giving them access to the necessary resources that they need to solve that problem. There's also more technical kind of support where you're like, helping somebody review their PR or helping somebody look through the issue they are facing and try to offer to help them. So that's also part of this kind of contribution. And then there's content, which is where a lot of people also contribute. And this is starting to be very popular with the Web3 ecosystem, particularly where they are opening issues on their projects on GitHub and saying, hey, one of the issue would be we need content on how this tool, maybe Web3.js, can work with another thing, right? Or create a tutorial or a blog post about how to use XYZ tool with our tool, things like that. So people are starting to make more educational resources, educational content, just to basically help the community learn how to use that tool. So these are the different types. I'm sure there are other types that I haven't captured here, but these are the ones that I've experienced and used myself. And then when you've decided on the kind of contribution you want to make, the next step would be to go do the work, right? And let me show you the steps that I've kind of followed in my own experience over the past couple of years. So you find a project that you're interested in. That is step one. Step two would be to then go read the contribution guidelines, because you can't contribute to the project if you don't know how to contribute or what you need to do to make your contribution so that they can accept your contribution. So you read the contribution guidelines, and when you've understood the requirements for contributing, then you can fork the repository and clone it locally. That one, I think, almost everyone I would expect have done that before. And then the step four would be to create a new branch for your changes. Usually when you fork a repo, you land at the main branch or the master branch, and then you just branch off so that you be on a separate branch where you can make your own changes. And then when you're done making your changes, you can commit those changes, and finally you push it up to GitHub and send a PR. So your contribution probably will end at you sending the pull request for the work that you have to do immediately. Then there's another level that starts after you send the PR, and that's the PR review and editing process. So the maintainers are going to look at the PR you send. They're going to say, hey, this is good, but we want you to change something here, or we want you to do something different. So that's where the collaboration comes in. They're going to look at the work, look at what you've done, and give you some kind of feedback to get it to look the way that it should look, or the way they want it to look. So this is the typical workflow. What I want to do now is to basically work with you to show kind of like a real life example. Let's follow these steps that I've said on an actual repository and try to do these things, right? Like I said, I like to show and tell because I feel like it's usually one of the best ways to teach people how to do stuff. If you talk and talk and talk and talk, it's very helpful for some kind of people, but other people really want you to learn from seeing you do stuff. So that's what I'm going to do is let me go to GitHub. Actually, let me go to Shadim's GitHub. So I'm going to do GitHub. So this, okay, let me show you guys. So normally, if you want to find a project to contribute to, you can find maybe Meta, Microsoft, Google, whichever one you're interested in. They're going to have a bunch of different repositories on their GitHub like this. So normally what I would do is I will go and check the visibility and set it to public. So this is the one that I know that probably all have open source licenses, and they are going to be accepting contributions on these ones. And then you can click around to find the exact one that you're interested in. The network status one is the one that I've been working on for some time. And we recently opened a new issue that says, add a README file to the repository. So if you look at the repository, we have two projects. We've got the backend project. This one has a readme.md file that shows you how to run the backend server. We have a front-end project that also has a README file that shows you how to run the front-end project. But the parent repository does not have any READMEs at all, right? So there's no instruction on telling me what the backend is, what the front-end is, or how to run the parent folder. And that's what this issue is saying. So let's look at that. Add a README file to this repo. It should have an overview of the project. It should have instructions for setting up the project locally. It should have instructions for how to run the project and any other relevant information. If you want a reference, you can watch the Building Public live stream here. Okay, so someone has said, hey, can I take this on? This is last week. And it's probably been assigned to that person. But this, I wanted to do a different one, maybe like a code contribution that we have on a different repo. But I've learned that if you're trying to teach people how to do something, you find the path of least resistance. If I start showing you how to make like a code contribution to this repo, you might start feeling overwhelmed or feel like, okay, maybe this thing is not for me. This is too much, right? But this is a README contribution. So I feel like this is a good way to start and to use as an example so that if you're doing this yourself, you will not feel like, oh, this is too much. So I'm going to follow the examples that we talked about or the steps that we talked about, and I'm going to try to make this contribution, right? So the first things to do is to fork this repository, right? Let me go ahead and do that. I already have it, but for the purposes of this, let me fork this again and create a fork. Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to see the steps that we outlined. Find the project. We've done that. Read the contribution guide. I haven't read that, so I'm going to go ahead and read that. Let me go to parent project and see if there is one in the front end. Okay, I can't find one. But in most open source projects, you would definitely, okay, oh yeah, I think I know where it is. It's on this one. Yes, yeah, this is where it is. Always start your PRs with draft state. Commit should be atomic. Yeah, so this is part of the process of making an open source contribution. You read the contribution.md guide to be sure, learn all of the things that they want you to do when you want to send a PR, how to format your code if you need to use Prettier or if you're using ESLint. Some projects would enforce a particular one. Some people like ESLint, some like Prettier and stuff like that. All new branches must be on top of a fork. So we've already forked it, so that's good. All branches submitting to development must be tested. Okay. So once you've made sense of the contribution guide, you know what they are asking of you. Then let's go back to the fork that we made. Where is it? So this one. And then let's run this locally. Please keep me in check. I want to be sure that I'm not spending too much time.
It's fine.
It's fine? Okay. Let's make a new directory. Let's call it Web3 Afrika OSS. And then I'm going to clone into this repository. It's called network status. So now I can go inside. Oh, let me zoom in. I usually forget that it can be small for you guys. So now that I'm in network status, I want to see now the instructions. Clone the repository, change into the backend directory, install the dependencies, run the local dev server, and then just run Prometheus. Okay, so this is for the individual projects that are inside of this repository. So what I want to do is for me to be able to know what this project is about and understand it well enough to write a README about it, I want to run both projects to see what the project is about, because just imagine like you're looking at this for the first time. You can't possibly start writing a README if you don't know what you're going to write about. So what I want to do is follow the instructions to run both the front end and the back end of these projects. And then when I've seen it and I've made sense of it, then I can write a good README for the parent folder. So here we clone the repository, we change into the front end folder, npm install and npm run dev. So I think it's just very typical things that I guess we probably already know. So let's do cd. Actually, I'm going to open this in VS Code first. Right. So we've got backend, front end, and license file. So what I want to do now is go into the front end folder. Let's do front end. If I can type. And now I can npm install, which is what the README said we should do. Following this, cd front end install and run dev. So while that's going on, I will go into the backend as well on a different terminal. And I'm going to npm install as well. So I've got two terminals for the front end and for the back end. Now, something else that I noticed is if you look at the back end, it says that you need to run Prometheus as well. So download the Prometheus binary for your local machine. Let me show you what that website that is linked looks like. So Prometheus is a time series database that they use for monitoring different network requests, or you could basically they use it for a ton of different things. This is just the use case that they're using it for in this project. So it's basically a database, but for time series data. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Oh, where was I? No. Yeah, this is where we were. So you can go ahead and set up Prometheus following the instructions listed here, but I already have Prometheus actually. Let me see, I think I have Prometheus running here. Yes, so this is my Prometheus.yaml file. I already have it running following the configuration that was documented here. So what I'm going to do now is start that Prometheus server. You guys let me know when it starts getting confusing, right? Setting up the system locally can be a bit confusing for people. So do let me know. To run the Prometheus executable file, what I mean by that is if you look at the left side of my VS Code now, you should see console libraries, consoles, data, Prometheus, and then the last file is prometheus.yaml. So this is the Prometheus executable file, this one without any extensions at the end of it. And that's the one we want to run on the terminal. And to access it, you just do / to access the data there. So we run that and it should run, basically, it should run. So anyone can do this. So download Prometheus, extract it from a zip file, open the prometheus.yaml file, put this configuration in there and run that command. That's all it takes. So that's, again, following the documentation. That's what it says we should do. Install the dependencies, make sure that Prometheus is running. And then we can do npm install, which we've done, and then we can do npm start for the backend server. So on the backend, I will do npm start, see what we get. So the server is running on the backend. So let's go to the front end. And what did you say we should do? Let's see that. Front end we should do npm run dev, right? So let's do npm run dev. And this should run the front end on localhost 3000. So now we have 3 services running, right? The Prometheus server, which is the database, the front end, and the back end. So let's look at the localhost 3000 and see what that project looks like. If it doesn't work, then something is wrong with the repository, and that would immediately give me an idea of something, of a fix I can recommend for them. Like, I followed your docs and this XYZ thing didn't work. Okay, so like I said, it didn't work, right? Because now I see that it's looking for a URL that doesn't exist, right? Process.env next public Prometheus URL. Okay, so what that tells me is that the front end repository is supposed to have a .env file, right? And it's supposed to export some URL. I know that because I've just tried to run and I've run into this error. So if you look at page.tsx file in line 3, right? It's trying to access a URL inside the env file, but we don't have an env file. So let's see if there's an env.example file. Okay, so if you look at the repository itself, you see that there's a env example file, which would give you the kind of configuration you need to put inside of your .env file. So this exists, but it was not documented. It's not part of the documentation. So if I was trying to contribute to this project, this is my first clue. This is my first thing to contribute. Now I can go file an issue and say, hey, when I followed the documentation, I ran into an issue and this is what I can do to fix it. So probably at the point where you're setting up the front end directory, that's where you can say, hey, make sure to create a .env file and add such and such content into it. So let's go and do that. Actually, I'm going to make a new file, .env, and in there, I'm going to paste the thing that I just copied from GitHub. And this is the URL where the front end project is going to fetch data from the database, from Prometheus, right? So I'm going to save that. I don't think I need to reload because Next.js is so powerful these days. It should be able to pick up that I've changed the... And there you go. So I didn't have to reload, but now we have that project working locally. I actually want to take note of that issue because I want to remember to fix it later. All right, so our first attempt to solve that issue of adding a README to the parent directory of this project is to run the services locally, both of them, and we have done that. So if you look at the backend, let me open this a bit. You see that the services are running and it's monitoring the health of the service. So the next thing now is for me to try to make sense of this project, right? I have to understand what is going on here so that I can document it in the README. I see that it says current network status. So basically, I can understand that there's a couple of different services here. There's a JSON RPC server, a website, there's an archiver, there's an explorer, documentation, and a couple of different services. So this tells me that the project monitors all of these services and it lets people know when the service is online and when it's offline, right? At least that's the first thing that comes to mind when I look at this. And then there are 2 links. There's an uptime monitor So this is going to be reporting to people how long ago the services has been up, and if it is failing, it's going to report it here. So this is an uptime monitor page. And I think the last one is the latency graph that shows the latency of all the service checks that went on. If you would like, you can also then dig into the code, try to see how everything works. We've got two components, the header and the footer. We've got the uptime page, and we see that we're fetching data using this fetch status function. The fetch status function is getting the data from Prometheus, and it is grabbing the 10 most recent services with this get latest service function. So I'm saying this because I know it, because I've looked at this code base before. If whatever I'm doing here is looking like magic to you, just know that I'm not looking at this for the first time. If this is the first time I'm looking at this code, I would definitely spend like a lot more time knowing what each function does, looking at how it's fetching the data, seeing the query where it's fetching the data from. This is the point in a project where you try to spend some time to understand the code, so that you can make sense of it well enough to write the README that you want to do for it. But since I already know most of these things, and I've run both of them locally, I've seen how they work, I've seen the services that they monitor, and what is obtainable inside the project, I can now write a README that would tell me or tell any other user what this project is about. So to do that, I'm going to create the readme.md file, because that is what the project requires. readme.md. And here, now we can start writing the README for this project. That would, let me see, time. We've got 10 minutes. Oh my God. Okay. So this is probably the part where you start writing like Shadium's network monitoring project. So this README is definitely going to take some time, and I don't want it to take too much time. So I'm going to grab, everyone knows how to write READMEs, right? I would expect that, you've all been doing this for some time. So writing a README is basically just writing like a documentation telling somebody else everything they need to know about that project. And since we've done that, seen that it has a front-end Next.js part that fetches data from Prometheus and displays the data of if the services are online or offline. And then the backend is a Node.js server that makes a request to those services we are monitoring every couple of minutes to check if they are still online or offline. So with that understanding, we can just come here and write a README like this project. I'm going to grab something that I've already written down. I was actually planning on working on that issue before the possibility of this workshop came up. So and someone has already even sent a PR for that issue, but I'm using it as demonstration to show you how you would normally do this if that wasn't the case. So I grabbed some content from that PR with some changes that I would make on my own, and I put that content together. So this is what I'm going to write as part. This is the changes I've made with respect to creating this README file. So let me look at that issue again. It says add a README file, overview of the project, instructions for setting it up, instructions for running it, whatever information else that can be relevant. So this is basically all they asked us to do. So we have some overview of the project. It's a repository that is designed to monitor the status of the Shadium network services. It provides users information. So this kind of solves the issue of overview of the project. The prerequisite here is other relevant information that I think people should know. You need Node.js, at least version 18 and above. you need to adhere to the requirements of each submodule because there's backend and front end. And then some installation instructions. Clone the repository with this command, cd into the backend and npm install it. Basically, those things that we did when we were starting to set up this project, and then do npm start to run the backend server. It will start the server on port 3002 or a locally specified port if that is the case. Again, note that the Prometheus server should be up and running on port 9090. Otherwise, the backend will not be able to function properly. And when you have that working, then for the front end, you change into the front end directly and npm install, and then you can npm run dev to start the local dev server. So this is basically what we've done, and this will now give like a general overview to anyone who's looking at this repository for the first time, trying to make sense of what it is. So now I'm going to commit my changes, right? I think I can also stop all these ones for now. So I'm going to open a new terminal at the root, and let me do git status to see what has changed. The only thing that has changed in this project is that I've created a new file called readme.md, right? And I want to commit that file. So let's do git add that file. Okay, something that I said we should do that I didn't do, that I just remembered now, and I'm really happy that this is happening right now. See this step 4, create a new branch for your changes, right? I forgot to do that. You know, when I did the clone, I started working directly in the main branch. But well, it's not too late to do that. So what I can do now is, let me try to do git checkout into a new branch, and let's call it I don't know, OSS maybe. So now I'm in a new branch, and I'm in the new branch with the changes that I've made, so I won't mess up the main branch. Another thing that I want to call out with this branching thing is, if I didn't do this, what I just did now, if I didn't switch to an OSS branch and worked in my main branch, it's still fine, right? Some people will frown on it, but I think it's still fine because I'm working on a fork of the project, right? I'm not pushing directly to the repository where I'm not working directly on that parent repository. I'm working on a fork of it. So even if I push to my main branch, when I want to send a PR, I can PR to the dev branch of that other project or to a different branch, wherever they review their PRs from, right? So that could still work, but normally it would just be better to work off of your new branch, even in your fork. So let's do git add the README file. I think we've probably done this before, but it's all right. And then it's usually a good practice for me to do git status again, make sure that I'm not missing anything that I've done. Then I want to commit. The commit message is where you basically tell people the changes that you made in this PR that you want to send. So I added a readme.md file, right? And now I can push from this to OSS, which is the local branch that I have. Cool. So now let me, okay, something is happening on my system where I cannot click links and it will go to the browser. I think okay, if you're using the Arc browser, probably this is happening to you. If you update to the latest version of the Arc browser at the moment, I don't know the version number, but if you go to your Arc browser now and you update, then it will not automatically open links for you from Slack, Discord, from anywhere, basically. I don't know if that's happening to anyone, but that's happening to me, definitely. So now I've pushed that changes to my OSS branch. And what I can do is I want to call something out here. The reason that I'm able to send a PR to the parent branch instead of my fork is because I'm the maintainer of this project, right? I have all the right accesses. I'm not pushing to my fork. I'm pushing now to the parent branch. So if you were the one making this PR, you would likely push to your fork, which is the one that you created on your own account when you basically started sending this PR. So you push to your fork, and then from your fork, you send a PR back to the parent branch, which is this one, right? But Git has my Git record uh, into the it has like my GitHub account has the right permissions for both my fork and this one, and I think I didn't switch to point to my fork when I'm making my changes. So now I'm sending a PR back to the parent branch. It would be different for you or for anyone else, but this is typically how it would work. You would select the parent branch, go to, actually, let me do that. Let me go to pull requests, click on new pull request, and say that I want to send from the OSS branch, which is the branch that I just created, back to the main branch, right? The only reason I saw that button to compare and send a PR is because I have the right access to do that. Ordinarily, you would push to your own fork, and when you've pushed it, you come to the pull request tab. You won't see this for sure, but you can click on new pull request and then select where you want to send it to, right? I want to send from the OSS branch, which is where I've pushed my README file, right? If you look at the changes here, you would see this is what is new, right? This is the README file that I've added. And then that's what I want to pull request back to the main branch. Again, some projects would have preferences for the branch you send your PRs to, right? Some of them could say, hey, don't PR directly to the main branch, send it to the dev branch or to the staging branch or wherever. So then you select whatever that branch would be here and send your PR to that branch. So I'm going to do that and click on create pull request. Here you can put more information about what you've done. So inside the description, you can say, I added a readme.md file with an overview of the project, and I don't know, whatever is that you do, you just write all of those down. This part helps very well for the maintainers of the project to get a good idea of the changes that you've made. So I would be very vocal here in this description, right? I would write every single thing that I've added, not just that I added the readme.md file, but what are the contents that I've added inside of that file. You know, I added an overview, I added a prerequisite section that, you know, talks about what is needed before you run the project. I added instructions on how to install, instructions on how to run it locally, blah, 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 blah. All of those things are very helpful for the maintainers to know exactly what you did. Again, they will definitely go through the commit to look at the changes that you've made. They will read everything else and, you know, see if they want. Then another thing that the requirement said is to make the PR as a draft, right? Like, don't send an actual PR directly to the main branch. You should make the PR as a draft. Some projects will say just make your PR. Other ones will say make it as a draft. In our case, the contributor guide said make the PR as a draft, in which case you can click this drop down icon and select create draft pull request, and then create the draft pull request. So they will know that this is a work in progress. It's not ready to be merged yet. They should look at it before they actually accept the PR, which is cool, right? So now, if you go to the parent project, in your case, you might still be in your fork, but if you come back to the parent project where you forked it from and go to the pull requests, you should see that there's a new pull request now that says added a readme.md file. So this is the basic steps of how to, you know, send a PR, how to contribute. This, when it gets accepted, and this is the part where the second half of your contribution starts. The reviewers or the maintainers, they are going to see that you sent a PR, they're going to open the PR, They're going to run it locally, see what it looks like. If it's like a code PR, like you made some code changes, they're going to run it locally, see that it compiles, see that it runs, see that it doesn't break anything, see that the tests are passing on that on your PR and everything. If there are any changes, they will make comments. As you can see, somebody sent this PR, and let me show you how it has been going, right? So this is my comment to them as a maintainer. This was very well articulated. I've added a few suggestions. So these are some of the suggestions I made on this repository for the person that sent this PR, and they're going to look at it. They're going to make the changes that I requested. They're going to improve it however way they feel they should, and then they're going to send an updated PR that has basically accounted for all the suggestions that I made or whatever else. So that's the second half of your contribution. Is there's going to be a little bit of a back and forth with the maintainers, and they're going to basically guide you towards getting the PR to be the quality and the standard that you wanted. And after that, they're going to accept that PR, and you would become an open source contributor, just like that. So I wanted to go through this process so that I know that I'm up on time. It's 9 p.m. for me, which means it's been 1 hour since I started this presentation. So I'm going to quickly hurry off to the other slides before we go. So this looks like a lot of work and effort, even though I say, oh, it's very easy, it's very simple. But you've just seen me do all of those things. And if you're wondering, why would I want to do this for a project that's not even my own? Well, there are a few reasons, right? One of them is skill development, right? It improves your coding, collaboration, and problem-solving skills, right? If I wasn't, if I was looking for ways to kind of like improve myself on a particular language, like for instance, React, or even Ethereum, to be honest, working on the project with them is usually a very good way. By the time you're done reading the documentation and reading the README files and trying to make sense of the project, your skill in that thing has basically skyrocketed to a good extent. Probably even more than you knew before you started looking to make a PR, right? So it's usually a very good way to improve your own skills as a person, your collaboration skills, because you're going to work with different people. People are going to review your work. They are going to give you feedback. You're going to implement that feedback. So there's going to be some kind of collaboration going on in there. And that is also good for you as a person because it's improving your skills there and your problem solving skills, right? When you see an issue, you're going to think through, how do I solve this problem in the most optimal way possible? How do I make sure that I'm doing it the right way? I'm not breaking other things while I'm making my own fixes. So it's a very good way to improve your skills in these areas. Networking is also a benefit to making open source contributions because you get to connect with other developers and other professionals in the industry who are of like minds, who you can even build. So I have a story that I think I don't have time to tell, but people have met just as contributors to the same open source project. They've gone from there. Oh, hey, I saw that you sent a PR. I'm going to take a look at it for you. Or maybe Joshua and Desmond have made contributions to the same thing. And from that project, they start talking to each other, they get to know each other, they've gone off to go and build a startup now. It's clearly not Joshua and Desmond, right? But I'm making an example, right? People have started off a company just off of an open source project. People have met people that gave them money when they were raising funds because they've seen they connected with them during their OSS contribution times. So you can meet meaningful people, you can make friends, you can build projects just by being active as an open source contributor. Another one is recognition. I think the 2 points are alluding to the same thing, right? GitHub can become your portfolio, right? And that becomes really important if you start looking for a full-time job or a full-time engagement. I know some, I don't know, 6, maybe 5 months ago when I was interviewing, I applied to Polygon Labs. And when the recruiter reached out to me, yeah. And when it got to the point where I have to talk to them, I sent them an email like, hey, here's my CV, so that you would get because when recruiters reach out to you, normally they don't have your CV. They are just reaching out like, hey, we have an opening if you'd like to be interested, blah blah blah. So when you now schedule an actual call to get on the interview, I was thinking, okay, these people need to know a bit about me so that they would know the right questions to ask me. So I emailed them ahead of the meeting. Here's my CV, and so that you basically get a handle on my experience. And they said, hey, we don't need your CV. We already have your GitHub profile. I was like, okay. Oh, that's a first. I didn't know that my GitHub profile was enough to, basically start interviewing with me and stuff. But it's happened a couple of times. If I'm not looking at the Zoom chat now, but if I ask everyone who's applied to a job, and as part of that application, they ask you for your GitHub profile, probably all of you, right? So, but that makes my point. Every job that you apply to today as an engineer, as a dev advocate, as anything these days, there's always good recognition that goes to your GitHub. They want to see if you're contributing to open source, what kind of project you're developing, what kind of things you're working on, and sending a PR to an EVM-based layer one chain is a big deal, right? Like I said, this is a weekend, right? We are doing where is the Zoom chat? Hold on one second. I want to find where we are. Okay, this is where we are. You guys give me 1 second. I'm going to grab water and I'll be right back.
All right, guys. I hope that we're getting value from this, because I am. So this, as I was saying in the chat, this would be a good time to drop your questions in the chat. We'll soon conclude the event. We're a little bit above an hour. So, but I believe that most of us are here to get the value. So if the value that we're getting still remain, let us tap it fully right now, right? So in case you want to ask questions or you have questions that you have that you're trying to ask, now will be a good time to drop them in the chat. And maybe when we get to the question and answer section, you might have the opportunity to unmute your mic and ask him directly. But okay. Oh, I see questions. Okay, good.
All right. Can you all hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. Sorry, I just needed to quickly grab water. So as I was saying, yeah, recruiters look at your GitHub a lot these days, and it kind of like helps them make the decision to hire you, give you an offer, or even to start the conversations with you. So somebody told me very recently on Twitter that GitHub is the new CV or something like that. So contributing to open source basically improves your reputation. Even before like people even notice you or come to you or even talk to you, they kind of like feel confident in your skills. So that's also one of the very good benefits why people contribute to open source. Now, there are some common challenges that I've heard in my time working in open source, and even before then. One of them is I don't have time, right? One way that you can make time is to set some time apart every week or even on weekends. So when I started, I think my first open source contribution was to Gridsom. Gridsom is a Vue.js framework. It was a static site generator at the time. Yeah, this tool. It's been a long time ago, but this is the first project that I ever sent a contribution to, and it was merged, and I was so happy. I was all over the moon. It's probably maybe 3 years ago. Can't remember. So I would always say there's no time, but I finished going to one conference at the time and they talked a lot about open source and how helpful it is and the business values of it. And I go home, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to do this open source thing. I never did it. I think I was working on Netlify at the time. But then one weekend, after I had a chat with my manager and he's like, so is there anything you're doing outside of work or something you want to be doing outside of work? I said, yeah, I want to be more into open source. I want to contribute and stuff like that. It's like, try to do it one weekend and see how it goes, right? And then I tried on a Saturday like this. I opened my laptop. I found Gridsom. It was a Jamstack kind of static site generator. seemed very well inside my wheelhouse. So I dived in, and after a couple of days, I sent the PR and they merged it, and I was so happy. So that could be something that could resonate to anybody here. It could be you, it could be someone else, but time will never be available. You will generally never have time until you start to consciously make time for that thing. Another one is I don't know the project well enough. That's pretty common, right? If someone tells me to contribute to, I don't know, maybe the Vertex AI one, um, I would say that I don't know it well enough to make any meaningful contribution to it. But then there's a ton of other projects that you can start with. Or even if you don't know it very well enough, the one way to know it well enough to be able to contribute is to dive into the documentation and into the readmes. That's why I say that's always the very best place to start, because by the time you're done reading all of that, you kind of know it to some extent, right? Um, so that's always a very good place to start, is to, if you're feeling like you're not very confident enough to go and dive into one thing, try to read about it, try to learn. The first step into open source contribution is not the contribution itself. It's first of all immersing yourself into it and learning as much as you can about the project. Another one is I don't know. What do I know that I want to contribute? you know, this one happens to me very often. I can't remember something very recently about uh, Linux operating system. I've never used any Linux thing in my whole life. I don't know anything about Linux. And there was some, I don't know, last week. I'm just trying to make references to when I felt like this, like what do I know that I want to contribute? Somebody sent me something else. I'm like, I have zero idea about this thing. So like I don't know how I'm going to be able to contribute to that. But this is the advice that he gave me as well, because it's something that I needed to do, something I want to get better at doing. Start very small, start from testing and documenting, which is what I did that time that I was, showing you how to work with it, how to contribute. One of the first things to do is, if you're feeling like you don't know what to do or how to contribute, or you feeling like this thing is way over my league, I can't possibly make any meaningful contribution to it, start very small, right? Start from just open one file. If you're a developer and you're interested in making code contributions, open one. It could be the one component, like a header.js file, right? Just focus on that. Start very small. Look at how the code is structured. Look at, try to look if there's something that you could possibly improve in any of the functions, in any of the files. You don't necessarily have to know how the whole thing, well, if you do, that's very good, right? But sometimes you get thrown into a really big code base that you likely spend months before you get through the whole cycle and the whole workflow of how all the code works. But you don't have to wait until you have the holistic, a view of it. You can start from very small files. You can start from the README file. You can start from the documentation to make your changes when you're feeling like you don't have the necessary skills to make, a big ass contribution. Another one is feedback. People are genuinely scared of feedback, because and also that's also what holds a lot of people back from the whole build in public or work in public thing, is people feel like I'm not comfortable enough to share my work publicly, and somebody will now come and tell me that I did very bad, or somebody will now come and give me a very bad review on the PR. Somebody will, that's a valid concern that keeps people back from doing things that ordinarily they would do. But and that was me. I know that, and I can say that because I was like that for a very long time. The reason why I didn't start my YouTube channel for the longest time is because of that. I was very scared of how people would judge me. What would they say? What if I was writing a function and I mess up the syntax? What would people say? At some point, you just have to be okay with whatever they say. Be open to constructive feedback. Sometimes the feedback is not even constructive, let me not lie. Yeah, sometimes it can be very harsh and you feel really bad. But I think those days are really behind us, where you would, like, people would be really harsh with words, or, oh, you messed that up? Why did you do that? This person, you don't even know anything. I think that was probably sometime in 2016, 2015 when people were using Stack Overflow to troll other engineers. It's not like that anymore. Hardly will you send a PR to a maintainer and the maintainer will just kind of like start lambasting you. I don't think that's gonna happen anymore, right? But in any case, be open to receiving feedback. Feedbacks are usually meant to help you, right? If you look at the feedback that I gave on this PR, I'm using this one as an example for a ton of different reasons. Because I think it covers both the first and the second half of your PR of your contribution journey. So this is just a suggestion. And for the places that I made comments, you can also remind developers to adhere to the requirements of each submodule in the repository. So this is probably the kind of comments you can expect. Like no maintainer will come and start shouting at you or telling you like you did a bad job. It's just basically going to be, hey, this thing is like this. Can it be like this? Stuff like that. So if you're the kind of person that like getting that kind of feedback is why you're not yet doing your work or putting yourself out there, just do it, right? Nobody is gonna shout at you. And then the last challenge is, where do I even start? So let's say that I've sold you on open source now, and I've gingered you and you want to start doing open source. What's the first step you should take? The first step is right here, right? The reason we're having these workshops across different communities in different countries is to help you have the right answer to this kind of question. Where do you want to start? Where should I start? Start right here, right? When I say right here is on this call, right? I'm going to show you some open source repositories and I'm going to show you some open issues that you can start from. And the good thing about this workshop is that now you have like direct access to me and to other maintainers that you can ask questions. You can say, hey, how do I contribute to this project? What should I do? What would be the good first thing for me to do? And then I'll point you to the right place, right? So that's another thing that I'm going to dive into a bit further down the line. And the last thing I want to say, oh God, I'm 70 minutes over. The last thing I want to say is join the Shadium OSS community on Discord. We have subsequent conversations like this. We have weekly office hours where we go through the different issues that people are facing with open source, try to help them solve it, try to show you how to do a ton of different things, right? There's events every week. I have a built-in public event myself that I manage myself, where I come on the open source channel and I go and build something in public, right? Actually, this project that we just demoed today, this one, from beginning till end, we built it from scratch on that channel, right? So you get to see how we figure things out, see how we run into issues, how we try to solve it, be part of that. Sometimes I would say, hey, go and make a contribution. For instance, I don't know if this project is still running. It's probably not running anymore. Oh yeah, it's not running. I stopped it. But sometimes part of the things we do on the open source channel is to just say, hey, go and try to do something, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, that's even better, because then we get to show you what to do to make it work. So that's a very good place to start with your open source journey. I don't know how to share the link to the Discord channel with you guys, but maybe I can put it
You
in
can
the
just
chat.
paste in the chat. Yes, exactly.
Where can I, in the chat, right?
The chat is good. Yes.
Yeah, okay, let me do that. If I have access to the chat. I do not have access to the chat. I'm going to send it to you, Joshua,
No,
so you
the
can.
chat. That is the one with the 21. Can you say chat 21?
Oh yeah, this one.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
sorry, I don't really use Zoom.
Zoom. I
Yeah,
get.
okay. So that's it then. So that's what we want to do is let me quickly grab something and put on screen so that you can all see it. Um, so what we're doing with this program at Stadium is we have I just have something to I wanted to say. So some of the things that we do on that channel as well is we offer weekly office hours to help you make decision and make some success. Another one is maybe something to be advising to people. So if you were to join the channel today and make a contribution, even if the video that I'm you're going to get the LinkedIn badge from Cadmy. And if you're interested in working in Web3 as an engineer or in any capacity, Shadim is a big company, right? To a good extent, the one of the only actually auto scaling blockchain at the moment. I used to say blockchain, but it's just chain because it's not a block based protocol. Um, Anyhow, this LinkedIn badges is going to give you some kind of reputation to tell the recruiters when they look at your LinkedIn profile that you are a contributor to a layer one protocol and you've been doing it for some time. So that's one way that we are also like saying, hey, let's help you get a job. Let's help you build your reputation. Let's show people the work that you're doing. Another one is contributor recognition. So every week or every month, there's like a contributor of the month thing that goes out on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Discord. Basically, blowing your trumpet for you and letting everybody know that you are contributing to Shadrim and that you're doing amazing work. So that also goes out to all the contributors who are doing really well. And then there's the community growth one where you get access to exclusive channels, the exclusive events, you get pro-apps and just fun stuff like that as a contributor. Once you become a contributor, you get access to more exclusive things and stuff like that. But for me, right, the thing that moves the needle for me is this mentorship part of it. Being able to see people work in public, being able to ask questions about my contributions, being able to get answers, being able to have someone kind of like even guide you through something that you want to do is a big deal. And that is what I want for all of you. The biggest thing that I want to be a takeaway for all of you that attended this workshop is if you are able to send a PR this week that we're going into, I don't really care if you do it on the Shadium Discord or on the Shadium repositories, anywhere, any project you care about, you like. If you're able to do that, then this workshop would have been a success for me. So if there's any other way that I can help you guys in the future with your open source work, getting started in Web3, knowing what Shadium is about, whatever, I'm very accessible on this channel on Discord. So ask me at any time and I'll be happy to answer your questions. I will stop here now and I'll take any questions that you all might have.
All right. Uh, can you hear me? All right, good. Thank you so much for that session, Ekene. And I believe that um, the attendees on this workshop have gotten value. So please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat or mute your mic. There's a question in the chat already, so I'm just going to read that out. It says that if you can just look at the charts towards the last. It says, can you kindly wait? Sorry, I missed it. Okay,
Oh,
can
I
you
see it. I see
kindly?
it. I see it.
Oh, okay.
I said, can you kindly do a recap on how to get an open source project? Links to get them. Uh-huh. 1 second, it's disappeared. Okay, as someone who's new to React.js, which resources can I get an open source project from? Okay, there's tons and tons of different places you can find open source projects. The two that I mentioned on this call is GitHub Explore. Go to github.com/, you will see a load of different open source projects. Another thing that I like to do, right, is, okay, I'm going to share my screen one more time. I promise it's not going to take too long. Another thing that I like to do is I go to GitHub right? And then I look for, let's say that I don't know if these guys they change their name to Meta. Let me see if they just okay, they've not. This person should sell his Discord handle to Facebook. I'm sure they will pay a lot for it. Um, anyhow, let me check Facebook. So what I usually do is I can go to github.com. Has no
Facebook
public.
is broken.
Oh, I
Facebook is
misspelled it.
broken. Yeah,
Is this one, yeah?
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll come to the repositories again. I'll change the visibility to public, and this will tell me all the open source projects that Facebook has, right? And then you can scroll through them, find the ones that you care about or the ones that you want to contribute to, and then you can do that. Normally, again, if you just look at their pinned repositories, right, you can see the open source ones. There's React Native, there's React, there's Docusaurus, a couple of other ones, Lexical. You can do the same thing for like Google. I think so. You can see the open source ones as well. And I'm just showing you, these are different ways you can find open source projects. Google is usually GitHub is usually where I go because that's where I see like almost everybody's open source project is on GitHub. So you can find it here. For the Web3 specific ones, that's the one that I talked about, Only Dust. I think it's probably Joshua that told me about this website. They have a list of different Web3 open source projects that you can find and start contributing to. There's a total of 225 projects on here, and you can start contributing to them. Another way to find is to join open source communities like Shadium, like Ethereum, like Bitcoin. There's a ton of them that you can join and just be part of the conversations going on there. Every now and then you would see them share projects that you could be interested in, and you will dive right into it. I think the second part of the question is, as someone who is new to React.js, which resources can I get an open source project from? So if you want to contribute to React, I don't quite really understand the question, but let's say you're new to React, but you want to contribute to React, the best way to start is the React documentation. Read through the docs, make sense of React. As long as you understand React well enough, go through the GitHub repository of React, read the contributing guidelines, how to contribute, find out what you can contribute on. First of all, try to follow the process to run it. If you spot anything that you want to contribute to, maybe the documentation, maybe one of the functions, it doesn't matter. Spend your time diving into it. Once you come across something or you find something that you think you would like to contribute to, that would be a good place to start. Is there any other question? What browser is he using? I'm using Arc browser. Is there anything else, Joshua, you want me to attend to?
I don't think so at this moment. It seems all the questions have been exhausted. A quite number of people have asked if you would be sharing your slides. I said yes, that we'll get the slides across. So if there's a way to share it now, that would be awesome. But if we have to send it across to them later, that's also very good.
Oh, say no more. Say no more. I'm going to put a link to the slides in the chat. You guys should try it now because it's under the Shajim organization, but try it. I made it public. Let me be sure that you can access it before we end the call.
I can access it. So
you can access it. Okay, cool. So I'm guessing it's public. I made it public.
yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining and having me. If you have any more questions, you can find me on Twitter. Yeah.
I dropped your Twitter handle.
Okay, my Twitter handle is in the chat.
So
this is not a one-time thing. Yeah. If you need to talk to me any other time, I'm on Twitter and I'm on the Shadium Discord that I shared as well. You probably get me to respond faster in the Shadium Discord because Twitter is very public and I have like hundreds, if not thousands of DMs. But either way, you can tweet at me. That one I will definitely see, or just message me on the Discord, and I will happily help you out. Is there any other thing, Joshua?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, Kenny. I really got value from this, and I'm sure a number of people also did. So, just like you said, if you have any further questions, the best place to reach out to him is in the Shalium Discord, and the link was pasted in the chat. If you still need that, we would also attach it to the mail that goes out. And if you're in the Web3 Africa community, feel free to ping me as well for any other thing that you might be needed that you weren't able to get during this conversation. And so that's it, guys. Thank you so much for coming to the workshop on contributing to open source. I really do hope that you start taking action with all this information you got today. And this has been fun. Thank you so much for joining. And I really do wish you the best of the weekend. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.